Have you ever sat in a quiet room and felt like something was missing? Not a thing you can buy or a person you can call, but something deeper. It is that strange feeling in the middle of the chest. It is a quiet ache that tells you there should be more to this life than just waking up, working, and sleeping. You might look at your hands and wonder why they do not carry more power. You look at your life and wonder why it feels like you are carrying a heavy backpack up a hill that never ends. We often think that the great moves of God are meant for someone else. We see the stories of the past or the people on a stage, and we think they have a special key that we do not own. We imagine that God is sitting far away on a throne made of clouds, looking down and deciding who is worthy and who is not. But what if I told you that the distance you feel is not coming from Him? What if the power you are looking for is already standing right at your door, just waiting for you to turn the handle? Think about a massive river. It is full of life and energy. It is moving with enough force to change the shape of the land. Now imagine that there is a heavy stone wall between you and that river. You can hear the water. You can feel the mist on your face. You know the water is there, but you are still thirsty. Your garden is still dry. You might even start to believe that the river does not want to give you its water. But the truth is much simpler. The river is just being a river. It is doing what it was made to do. It is pushing against that wall with everything it has. The water is not the problem. The wall is the problem. Most of us are living behind a wall like that. We spend our lives asking God to come closer, but we do not realize He is already as close as He can get. He is leaning against the other side of your heart right now. He is not waiting for you to become perfect. He is not waiting for you to go to school or learn big words or become a different person. He is simply waiting for a way through. He wants to flow through your life like that river. He wants to use your voice to speak peace and your hands to bring healing. He wants His thoughts to become your thoughts. This is not about religion. This is not about following a long list of rules so that you can earn a prize. This is about a relationship that is so real it changes the way you breathe. It is about moving from a life where you try to do everything on your own to a life where you let a higher power take the lead. It is the difference between trying to push a car and actually turning the engine on. I want you to really think about this question. What is stopping you from letting that flow begin? Is it a fear that you are not good enough? Is it the worry that if you give control to God, He might take you somewhere you do not want to go? Or is it just that you have become so used to the dry ground that you have forgotten what the water feels like? We are going to look at how to pull down those stones one by one. We are going to explore how an ordinary person can become a vessel for the extraordinary. This is not a dream. It is not a fairy tale. It is a way of living that has been proven by people who were just like you. They were not special because of who they were. They were special because of who they allowed to move through them. The world is full of noise right now. Everyone is shouting. Everyone is trying to find a way to be happy or successful or safe. But in the middle of all that noise, there is a quiet invitation. It is an invitation to stop trying so hard and to start trusting more. It is an invitation to step into the river and let it carry you. You were not created to be a stagnant pond. You were created to be a channel for the Creator of the universe. If you feel that pull in your heart right now, do not ignore it. That pull is the signal that the wall is ready to come down. You do not need to have all the answers. You just need to be willing to listen. By the time we are done today, you will see that the life you have been longing for is much closer than you ever imagined. It is not across the ocean or up in the sky. It is right here, it is right now, and it is waiting for you to simply let it flow. To understand how this power works, we have to look at someone who actually lived it. We need to look at a man who was so ordinary that most people would have walked right past him on the street without a second thought. His name was Smith Wigglesworth. He was not born into a family of wealth or high standing. He did not have a fancy education. In fact, he could barely read or write for a large part of his early life. He spent his days working as a plumber in a cold, grey town in England during the late 1800s. Imagine a man with rough hands and a simple way of speaking. He spent his time fixing pipes and dealing with the leaks in people's basements. He knew what it was like to work hard for a living. He knew what it felt like to be tired at the end of a long day. But inside this simple plumber was a hunger that could not be satisfied by normal things. He did not just want to know about God from a book. He wanted to know God like a friend. He wanted to see the things he read about in the Bible happen in his own neighborhood. For a long time, Smith was a quiet man. He was actually quite shy. He had a stutter that made it hard for him to speak in front of others. If you saw him back then, you would never have guessed that he would one day stand before thousands of people. You would never have guessed that his words would carry such weight that they would change lives across the entire world. He was just a plumber who loved his wife and loved his Creator. His wife, Polly, was actually a much better speaker than he was at first. She was the one who went out and shared the message, while Smith stayed in the background, supporting her and doing his work. But something began to shift inside of him. He started to realize that God does not look for the most talented people. God looks for the most hungry people. Smith began to spend his time in deep prayer. He would stay up late or wake up early just to sit in the silence and listen. He began to feed his mind with nothing but the words of life. One of the most famous things about him was that he refused to read anything except the Bible. He did not care about the newspapers. He did not care about the gossip of the town. He wanted his mind to be so full of light that there was no room for darkness or doubt. He was preparing his heart like a farmer prepares a field. He was clearing out the rocks and the weeds so that something beautiful could grow. The big change happened when he was in his late 40s. It was a time when he felt a sudden, massive surge of that inner river we talked about. It was like a fire had been lit inside his soul. Suddenly, the stutter was gone. The shyness was gone. The man who could barely put a sentence together was suddenly speaking with a power that moved people to tears. He did not use big, complicated words. He spoke simply, but his words felt like they were coming from another world. He began to travel. He went to places where people were sick, where people were broken, and where people had lost all hope. He did not bring medicine or money. He brought a total, unwavering confidence that God was present and ready to act. Stories began to spread of incredible things happening wherever he went. People who could not walk were standing up. People who were blind were seeing the sun for the first time in years. But here is the most important part of the story. Smith Wigglesworth never took the credit. He never tried to act like a superstar. If someone praised him, he would quickly point them toward the source of the power. He often said that he was just a man who believed. He saw himself as a simple vessel. He understood that he was like a light bulb. A light bulb is just glass and wire. It has no light of its own. It only shines when it is connected to the power plant. Smith spent every moment of his life making sure he stayed connected to that power. He lived a life of total discipline. He would not let a single doubt enter his mind. If a thought of fear came to him, he would cast it out immediately. He treated his faith like a muscle. The more he used it, the stronger it became. He showed the world that God is not looking for golden vessels or silver vessels. He is looking for yielded vessels. He is looking for people who are willing to be used, no matter how simple or ordinary they think they are. Smith Wigglesworth lived to be an old man, and he never lost that fire. Even in his final days, he was still looking for ways to let the life of God flow through him to help someone else. His life is a giant signpost for us today. It tells us that our background does not matter. Our mistakes do not matter. Our lack of education does not matter. The only thing that matters is our willingness to say yes. If a plumber from a small town can become a channel for the miraculous, then what could happen in your life? You might not be called to stand on a stage or travel the world, but you are called to be a light in your own home. You are called to bring peace to your own workplace. You are called to be the person who carries the presence of the divine into every room you enter. Smith showed us the way. He showed us that the secret is not in trying to be great, but in letting a great God have his way in us. When you look at his life, do not see a hero to be worshipped. See a brother who paved the path. See a man who proved that the river is real and that the water is available for everyone. He was a regular person who dared to believe that God meant what he said, and because he believed, the world was never the same. He left a legacy that is still speaking to us right now, reminding us that the same power that moved through him is sitting right next to you, waiting for its turn. If this power is so real and so available, why do we not feel it every single day? Why does it feel like some people are walking in a bright light while we are stumbling around in the dark? It is a question that can make you feel very lonely. It can make you feel like God is playing favorites. But the truth is much more hopeful than that. The flow of God is constant. It never stops and it never runs dry. The issue is never with the supply. The issue is with the channel. Think back to that image of the river. If you want a river to flow through your backyard, you have to make sure the path is clear. If the path is filled with old tires, heavy rocks, and fallen trees, the water will get backed up. It might become a swampy mess, or it might just stop moving altogether. This is exactly what happens in our hearts. We want the power, but we have allowed things to pile up in the way. The biggest rock in the river is fear. Fear is like a thick wall of ice. It freezes everything. We are afraid of what people will think of us if we start acting on our faith. We are afraid that if we really trust God, He might let us down. We are afraid of change. Most of us would rather stay in a familiar kind of sadness than step out into an unfamiliar kind of joy. Fear tells you to stay small. It tells you to keep your head down and stay quiet. But God cannot flow through a heart that is locked tight by fear. Then there is the rock of doubt. Now, doubt is different from having questions. It is okay to have questions. But doubt is when you decide that your problems are bigger than God. It is when you look at your bank account or your health or your broken relationships and you say this is too big for even the Creator to fix. Every time you say I can't or it won't happen, you are placing a stone in the middle of the stream. You are telling the river that it is not strong enough to get past your mountain. We also deal with the heavy mud of distraction. We live in a world that is designed to keep us busy every second of the day. Our phones are always buzzing. There is always a new show to watch or a new problem to worry about. We have become experts at being busy, but we have forgotten how to be still. You cannot hear a whisper in a thunderstorm. If you never give God a moment of silence, you will never feel the nudge of His hand. We are so distracted by the little things that we miss the greatest thing of all. Another thing that blocks the flow is the desire for control. This is a hard one for most of us. We want to be the boss of our own lives. We want to decide where we go and how we get there. We ask God to bless our plans, but we rarely ask Him for His plans. Surrender is a scary word to many people. It sounds like losing or giving up. But in the kingdom of God, surrender is how you win. It is letting go of the steering wheel so that the person who actually knows the road can drive. As long as you are gripping that wheel with white knuckles, the power of God cannot take over. There is also the issue of hidden things. We all have little areas of our lives that we try to keep in the dark. Maybe it is a bit of bitterness towards someone who hurt you. Maybe it is a habit that you know is pulling you down. You might think these things are small and don't matter. But even a small handful of dirt can make a clear stream cloudy. God wants to flow through a clean channel. He does not demand that you are perfect, but He does ask that you are honest. When you try to hide things from Him, you are essentially closing the valve. I want you to know that if you recognize these blocks in your life, you should not feel ashamed. Every person who has ever walked with God has had to deal with these same rocks. Even the great Smith Wigglesworth had to learn how to clear his path. The difference between those who experience the flow and those who do not is simply what they do with the rocks. Some people look at the rocks and walk away. Others get down on their knees and start moving them. Imagine how much lighter you would feel if you stopped carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Imagine the energy you would have if you were not constantly fighting against the current of your own fear. Most of us are exhausted because we are trying to do God's job. We are trying to provide, trying to protect, and trying to fix everything. When you clear the channel, you realize that you don't have to carry the river. The river carries you. The process of clearing the way is not a one-time event. It is something we do every morning. We check the stream. We see if any new doubts have fallen in overnight. We look for any bit of pride or anger that might be clogging the works. We offer those things to God and ask Him to help us move them. It is a gentle process. It is not about beating yourself up. It is about wanting the water more than you want the rocks. Once the path is clear, the water does not need to be told what to do. It knows where to go. It will find the dry spots in your life and bring them back to life. It will bring a peace that does not make sense to the people around you. It will bring a strength that you did not know you had. The only work you have to do is the work of clearing the way. The river will do the rest. Are you ready to look at what is standing in your way? Are you ready to let the rocks go so that the life of God can finally reach the places that have been dry for far too long? Now that we understand what blocks the way, we have to look at what it actually means to let God flow through you. It sounds like a big and holy idea, but it is actually very practical. It is like being a pipe that connects a massive water tank to a thirsty field. The pipe does not create the water. The pipe does not own the water. The pipe simply stays open so the water can move. When you live this way, your life becomes a series of moments where you are simply letting something greater than yourself take the lead. To let God flow through you means you stop acting like a reservoir and start acting like a channel. A reservoir tries to hold on to everything it gets. It wants to store the water and keep it for itself. But water that stays in one place too long eventually becomes stale and lifeless. A channel, on the other hand, is always giving away what it receives. It knows that more is coming from the source, so it does not need to worry about running out. This is a total shift in how you look at your time, your energy, and your love. The first step in this process is a deep and quiet trust. It is the kind of trust a child has when they jump into their father's arms. They do not check the math or ask for a safety plan. They just jump because they know they are loved. When you trust God like that, you stop trying to figure everything out before you move. You start to believe that if He is leading you to do something, He will also give you the power to do it. You stop looking at your own bank account and start looking at His riches. You stop looking at your own weakness and start looking at His strength. This leads to something called surrender. Surrender is not a sign of weakness. It is actually the bravest thing a human can do. It is saying to the Creator of the stars that you want His will more than your own. It is laying down your plans and your ego. Smith Wigglesworth used to say that he was always ready because God was always ready. He did not wait for a special feeling. He just assumed that if he stepped out in faith, the power would meet him there. He surrendered his reputation. He did not care if people thought he was strange. He only cared about being a clear path for the Spirit. Think about a time when you felt a small nudge to do something kind. Maybe it was a thought to call an old friend or to give a few dollars to someone on the street. That small nudge was the river trying to flow. When you act on those small things, you are opening the valve. The more you say yes to the small nudges, the more the flow increases. Most people are waiting for a lightning bolt or a loud voice from the sky. But God usually speaks in a whisper. He speaks in those quiet thoughts that tell you to be patient, to be kind, or to be brave. Obedience is the physical side of this flow. It is one thing to feel the water moving, but it is another thing to actually let it out. If you feel the urge to pray for someone and you don't do it because you are embarrassed, you are closing the pipe. If you know you should forgive someone, but you hold on to the grudge, you are creating a kink in the hose. Letting God flow means you do what He says, even when it does not make sense to your logical mind. You follow the instructions of the architect because he can see the whole building while you can only see one brick. This way of living takes the pressure off of you. If you are just a channel, then the results are not your responsibility. If you speak a word of encouragement to someone and they don't listen, that is not your failure. You did your job. You let the water flow. If you pray for a miracle and it doesn't happen the way you expected, you don't have to carry the weight of that. Your only job is to stay open and stay connected. It is a very peaceful way to live because you are no longer the one trying to save the world. You are just the one showing the world the Savior. You can see this in the way Smith Wigglesworth handled his meetings. He would walk into a room full of people and he would not have a set plan. He would just listen. He would wait for that internal sense of what God wanted to do in that specific moment. Sometimes he would be very gentle. Other times he would be very bold. But he was always listening. He was like a sail on a boat. He did not make the wind, but he made sure he was positioned in a way that the wind could move the boat. Letting God flow through you also means you start to see people differently. You stop seeing them as problems or as strangers. You start seeing them as people who need a touch from the Father. When you are in line at the grocery store, you aren't just waiting to pay. You are a carrier of the presence of God. You are a walking, breathing temple. That sounds very holy, but it just means that the peace inside you can be felt by the person standing next to you. Your smile carries more weight. Your silence carries more power. This is what we were made for. We were not made to be empty vessels or containers for our own stress. We were designed to be part of a great cycle of life. We receive from the source and we let it flow out to the world. And the beautiful secret is that the more you let out, the more you get back. The pipe that carries the most water is the one that stays the cleanest and the coolest. By serving others and letting God move through you, you find that your own needs are met in ways you never expected. It is a life of adventure. You never know who God will want to help through you today. You never know what words He will put in your mouth. All you have to do is wake up and say that you are open. You tell the river that you are ready to be used. You decide that today you will not be a wall, but a window. You will not be a dam, but a bridge. When you make that choice, you step into a story that is much bigger and much better than any story you could have written for yourself. Now we come to the part that matters most for your Tuesday afternoon or your Thursday morning. How do you actually do this when the kids are crying, the boss is sending emails, and the bills are sitting on the table? This is not a theory for a mountaintop. It is a way of walking through the valley. Smith Wigglesworth did not become a man of power by accident. He built a life that made room for God every single hour. He understood that you cannot ignore the source all week and expect the water to flow on Sunday. The first and simplest step is how you start your day. Most of us reach for our phones the moment we open our eyes. We let the world tell us what to worry about before we even get out of bed. But if you want to be a channel, you have to start by connecting to the reservoir. Spend the first few minutes of your day in total silence. You do not even have to say a long prayer. Just sit there and acknowledge that God is in the room. Say something as simple as "I am yours today. Use me however you want." This sets the tone. It opens the valve before the day even begins. A very practical habit is to feed your mind with things that build your confidence in God. Smith Wigglesworth was famous for only reading the Word of Life. He knew that the world is constantly trying to fill our heads with reasons to be afraid. If you spend all day watching the news or scrolling through social media, you are filling your channel with mud. You need to balance that out. Read stories of what is possible. Listen to words that remind you of who you are and whose you are. You are the gatekeeper of your own mind. If you want the water to be clear, you have to watch what goes into the stream. Throughout the day, practice the art of the short pause. You don't need to go to a church to find God. He is with you at the red light. He is with you while you are washing the dishes. Every hour or so, take one deep breath and remember that the river is flowing through you right now. This keeps the connection fresh. It prevents the rocks of stress from piling up. It is like clearing a small branch out of the stream before it has a chance to catch other debris and become a dam. Then, you must learn to act on the small nudges. This is where most people miss it. They wait for a big, dramatic sign, but God usually moves in the tiniest of ways. Maybe you are walking through the store and you see someone who looks sad. You feel a quick thought that says you should tell them they have a nice hat or just give them a kind smile. That is the river. When you follow that nudge, you are practicing obedience. It might feel silly at first. You might be afraid of looking weird. But every time you say yes to a small nudge, you are making the pipe wider. You are proving to yourself and to God that you are a reliable channel. Storytelling is a great way to see how this works in real life. There was once a woman who felt a sudden urge to buy a bag of groceries she didn't need. She didn't have much money, but the nudge was so strong she couldn't ignore it. She bought the food and drove toward her house. On the way, she felt led to turn down a street she never used. She saw an old neighbor sitting on a porch looking defeated. She stopped and gave the bag to him. The man started to cry because he had just eaten his last bit of bread and didn't know how he would eat that night. That woman wasn't a prophet or a hero. She was just a person who let the water flow through her hands. You also have to learn the power of the word no. To let God flow through you, you have to say no to things that clog the channel. You have to say no to gossip. You have to say no to the urge to complain. Complaining is like throwing sand into a motor. It grinds everything to a halt. When you feel a complaint coming on, try to catch it. Replace it with a thank you. Gratitude is the best way to keep the channel smooth and fast. It is very hard for a grateful heart to be blocked. Another daily practice is to be honest about your mistakes. When you mess up, and you will, because we all do, don't run away from God. Run to Him. If you get angry or you let fear take over, just admit it immediately. Say, God, I just put a big rock in the way. Please help me move it. Do not let the sun go down on a clogged pipe. The sooner you deal with the mess, the easier it is to clean. This is not about being perfect. It is about staying open. Finally, you must learn to listen more than you speak. We spend so much time telling God what we want Him to do. What if we spent more time asking Him what He wants to do? In your prayer time, try to spend half of it in total silence. Just listen to your heart. Listen to the quiet thoughts that rise up. Often, the answer you are looking for is already there, but it is being drowned out by your own voice. Living this way makes life feel like a constant conversation. You aren't just a person living a lonely life on a floating rock. You are a partner with the divine. You are part of a team. Every small act of kindness, every moment of patience, and every step of faith is you letting the Creator of the world express Himself through your unique personality. It is the most natural and beautiful way to live. It is what you were designed for from the very beginning. It is not a burden. It is the greatest freedom you will ever know.